can we start a little bit off with just sort of when we look at neurons in the brain, like this is the lens in which I see it.
Yes.
When we look at neurons in the brain, those neurons in the brain are fueled by our hormones, a lot of them for women. And so when estrogen specifically goes away, those neurons don't have the same kind of reaction. This is why we forget. This is why stress is so acute. And so the conversation in the collective right now has been, well, let's keep your estrogen up so these neurons work well. But I have been saying, but menopause is a natural process. So why should we keep the hormones up too high? Isn't there something that's supposed to happen? And this has led me to understand from a hormonal level how important the heart and the brain are and how they change with estrogen. So I'm just kind of curious, and I want to start off by just like, how do neurons in the heart work? And then my next question is, are they fueled by estrogen? I don't know if you know the answer to that.
So maybe we could step back for a moment, Mindy, even first talk about what heart coherence is, because it relates to your question.
Perfect. Great. Yeah,
so
great.
First of all, this idea that the heart is a brain, that there's neurons in the heart, that the heart sends more messages and vice versa is, again, just a surprise, a shock to many of us because we don't learn this in school. And even those of us that have been in wellness for many years, I know I speak for myself in saying that I didn't know this. So when I started when I started learning this research, for me, it's twofold, right? I love the science. I love learning all the research and the papers, but I also am a student of spiritual teachings and the Vedic philosophy, and the Vedas are the oldest teachings on the planet. So the reason that the book is called The Hidden Power of the Five Hearts is that a monk from India called Swami Shri Yukteswar talked about in his book, The Holy Science. He was a scholar of the Vedas, that there's 5 stages that we go through to awaken into this potential of open-heartedness, which also means, from our standpoint, just feeling, really high health, high vitality. We can talk about a study with DHEA in a moment, and just this ability to be fulfilled and loving and peaceful and content. So I was going really deep into these Vedic teachings on the heart. At the same time, I came in contact with the Heart Math Institute. And I found some of their work when I was writing my last Hay House book, actually called You Are More Than You Think You Are. So anyways, not to go on a long tangent, but I ended up doing a research study with them and learning a lot about these neurons in the heart. And so basically, to sum it up, what heart coherence is when you start to improve the communication and you create alignment between your heart, your brain, and your nervous system. So you think of it like a triad. And as Dr. Roland McCready, the research scientist that we did the study with, says, emotions run the show, right? So when you're looking at these patterns, a lot of people are wearing, Apple Watches and they're looking at their HRV numbers. But what research on heart coherence shows, it's not just the pattern, it's not just the numbers, but it's the actual patterns. And I'll show you a graph in the book right here. Right? So this is when you're experiencing an emotion of anger, which is really jagged. And this is what appreciation is, right? Simple practice to go in. It's these smooth sine waves. So what their research is showing is when we start to become more coherent, entrainment happens. So all these other systems like digestion and hormones and immunity start to become more efficient. You're spending less energy. That's what coherence feels like. The example I use in the book is you swim from one shore to the next, right? Incoherence is like you hit a rock, you scrape your knee, you get annoyed, you get angry, you're taking the fog out of your goggles. So my understanding is when we shift our energy and attention through these simple practices into the heart, we start to wake up these neurons, and it starts to change our perceptions, our thoughts. It starts to take us out of fight or flight, rebalance the nervous system. So there's this overall hormonal balance versus let's work with the hormones to try to support the neurons in the heart.
Right.
What I've seen, it's actually the reverse, like get coherent from within, and then you have a positive effect on the neurons.
You know what? That fits into something that I've written about in all my books called the hormonal hierarchy. And the hierarchy is that sex hormones sit at the bottom of the pyramid. And above that is insulin. So Fast Like a Girl was all about let's get your insulin in check so that your sex hormones can be in check. And then above insulin is cortisol. So if your cortisol's off, then you'll be more insulin resistant. If you're more insulin resistant, your hormones will be off. But at the top of the hierarchy that like calms the whole system is oxytocin. And one of the unique qualities of a female's body and brain is that we have a massive amount of oxytocin receptors in our amygdala. And we have a massive amount of oxytocin receptors in our heart.
Yes.
So, and we also have a massive amount of oxytocin receptors in bones, which is fascinating to me because I wonder if that's why we get a little bit like, I feel it in my bones. But oxytocin runs the hormonal show. So when you're talking about heart coherence, I think the way I think about it, correct me if I'm wrong, is I think what you're saying is from a frequency place. And what I'm hearing and interpreting is, yeah, that makes sense from even a neurochemical place. Like you're neurochemically changing yourself when you're thinking from your heart along with your frequency. Would you see it that way?
So when we think about what I call in the book, the wild horse mind, right? When we think about what the stress response is, which is resistance, upset to what is, you start to get caught up in thoughts, right? It's not the traffic that causes the stress or the bad weather or whatever it is. It's the thoughts, or in our case, the fire that we just went through, but it's all the thoughts like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming, or the traffic, like, why does it have to be this way? So it's the mind sort of spinning, and then it starts to then create this cascade effect in the nervous system, and the cortisol gets secreted and all that. So through these practices, which I can't say enough how much they helped me get through this fire, how much they've helped me just in my life, Dr. Mindy. Something as simple, for example, right now while we're speaking, is if you guys listening to this, if you place some of your attention on your heart. Now, for some people, it could mean even just touching your heart, but for many people, it's just putting some of your attention here. And what research published in the American Journal of Cardiology shows that this alone starts to rewire your nervous system, just moving attention. This is how powerful we are. So what it means is calming groundedness means that we aren't so over-identified in the thoughts, which create the stress, which makes us feel very ungrounded. This very grounded place, which the science, again, is showing there is this epicenter of, it entrains everything else when we come here. And spiritually, Dr. Mindy, we think about these ancient texts, Vedas, but also the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, they all assigned special significance to the heart. Pretty much all world religions as well. You think about this Sacred Heart of Jesus Christ, the Buddhist Heart Sutra, the Anahata Chakra, right? The Lev in the Torah, the word Kalb, which translates to heart, is mentioned 132 times in the Quran. So when we look at modern society, which is so thinking, like heady, confused, fear-based, right? All up in the thought. I get so excited about sharing this work because there's this place where there's clarity and groundedness. And then, of course, the modern research, there's over 500 papers. Because, like, why don't we know about this stuff that talks about the heart brain and its profound implications, again, on digestion, on immunity, on energy, on vitality, on hormones, on all of these different aspects of well-being.